In Valorant, you can pretty much win any round. Gun rounds, half-buys, ecos, all of them. They are all perfectly winnable. But compared to Counter-Strike, there are far fewer rounds that are guaranteed. And a big part of that is that, unlike in CS, no single gun is king.
For GTN, he could make a very quick rotation back into mid if he wanted to instead, Yuppie! What?
1 versus 3, there is a time concern here. Sobs, there it is, there's a snake bite. Can he stop this? Is the snake bite going to be enough? It is going to deny this one for now. And there goes the flashing. He's going to... Oh! That is Sobs! He's pulled it out of the bag out of nothing!
So why is it that even the worst guns in Valorant are still kind of good? Is that a bad thing? And does it lower the game's skill ceiling, or does it actually make things that much more exciting?
He can stick it half all the way. Just needs to watch the angle.
What? He's got a double kill with a shorty.
Valorant has always been compared to Counter-Strike. We've been doing it for 3 years now, and it is undeniable that Valorant and CS do share some crucial similarities. At their core, they're both 5v5 tactical shooters with economy systems, and most of Valorant's weapons are direct copies of CSGO's. But aside from that, they're actually not as alike as some people might think. Valorant wasn't designed for hardcore FPS boomers. Instead, Riot wanted to make a game that was more accessible for someone who was just getting into the genre, incorporating unique agent abilities into the gameplay and allowing both attackers and defenders to use the entire arsenal of weapons. Another important distinction is that Counter-Strike's economy is a lot less forgiving than Valorant's. Saving weapons is much more common in CS because it takes longer to hit max loss bonus. Plus, it's first to 16 instead of 13. Now, you might remember that these were some of the things that we covered when we talked about Valorant's economy last year, but we didn't delve that deeply into how some of the game's more niche weapons can impact games. You see, in Counter-Strike, there's sort of just a small fixed set of weapons that the vast majority of serious competitive players will actually spend their money on. Rifles like the AK, M4, FAMAS, and Galil are common options, alongside the AWP and the occasional Deagle or 5.7 or Tech 9 on eco rounds. There are, of course, players who make SMGs and CZs sing, but most rely on rifles or AWPs to gain an edge over their opponents. Of course, teams will still occasionally get eco'd, but it doesn't really happen that often, especially if one of those teams is on an actual full save. We saw some absolutely filthy Deagle plays throughout the champion stage of the Paris Major, but those still didn't usually result in round wins. In fact, teams attempted a combined total of 103 eco and semi-eco rounds, which accounts for rounds where they spent less than $10,000, and they only managed to win 8 rounds total throughout all 7 matches in the champion stage. That's only 8% rounded up. And when we compare this to Valorant, things get pretty interesting. Valorant players do still opt to buy rifles, but on eco rounds, anything goes. And it's been like that since the day the game came out.
Oh dear, he's managed to actually find himself a frag and steal with the Bucky, causing problems. This isn't supposed to be happening right now. Steal with the Bucky again, and it's not looking very good at all right now for Immortals. One more to go as the swing comes through, but with the thrifty it's steal.
Oh, shorty! What? Are you serious? Esperanza! Oh, he does not care. He says, yeah, I'll just rush this down, and the rest of the team is doing much of the same.
Also unsuccessful.
Like, how is he doing this with this shit gun?
3v3, 70 HP, gonna get an opportunity for one more. Last point.
I'm done.
Now, as I said before, the vast majority of Valorant's weapons are a direct copy of CSGO's. But obviously Riot wanted to make sure that their game appealed to a much wider audience than Counter-Strike. So they didn't completely copy Valve's creation. Instead, they wanted different weapons and playstyles to be viable. And over the past 3 years, we've seen some of Riot's efforts to differentiate themselves from Counter-Strike come to fruition, with players building their entire brands around specific agents or weapons outside of the status quo. As a result, some teams in the space are known for their measured, methodical executes, while others thrive on chaos. And after the inaugural season of Valorant's 3 international leagues, we now have a sea of interesting stats to look at. And by we, I mean Colten. Because I am sure as shit not gonna bore myself to death going through that.
And now, the guy who actually knows what he's talking about.
This has to stop. You can't keep foisting these Valorant scripts on me under the pretense of statistics. I can see what you're doing here. Anyway, the regular season for the VCT Americas wrapped up while we were writing this video, and the league average for eco round win percentage was pretty crazy. And for those like me who didn't know, eco rounds are awarded anytime a team wins a round while spending less than 10,000 credits total. With some help from Valorant analyst Willminder and stats from Run It Back, we know that the league average was 16.6%, which is already pretty high compared to what we saw in the Champions stage at the Paris Major. But one team stood out as a real anomaly in the region.
Salvage here, it's a phantom in the hands of Jake. Trying to get a push out. A shot long range does not work out for BCG. This is not looking good at all. It's a Jordy. It's come by himself. Standing ahead. Weapons are all down. Spike looking to be defused at halfway. A flick, the flick, but it's still. Do it again. Another 30 from C9.
Cloud9 boasted a 32% eco round win rate, nearly double the league average. They actually had the best thrifty round win rate amongst all 30 VCT partner teams worldwide. The Guard, and specifically MCE, were often praised for their impressive eco rounds last year, and that success has definitely carried over to Cloud9. So, how the hell are they this good at eco rounds? I have no idea. So we sat down with Zelsis, Zeppa, and MCE to talk about their mastery of Valorant's so-called weaker weapons.
Having a semblance of togetherness on things, where it's like 3 guys will set a trap, 1 guy will take an individual duel, 1 guy will hold. So it's like you're getting your chance at 2 or 3 different points in a round. They do a really good job of getting one and getting out. And I think what makes them unique is like Zeppa and Leaf, even Zelsis at times, they can kill multiple people in one clip with a stinger, which is not easy to do. Almost anyone can get 1 kill with a stinger every time. They can get 2, sometimes 3 kills without reloading, and that is like just absolutely insane.
We always use a stinger as a frenzy, just running a gun, and just like the stinger, just hopefully they never nerf it. I mean, stinger is like something we've used before the nerf, and I think because of like the pre-nerf and how good the stinger was before the nerf, is like it was pretty like really good, like really easy to handle. And after the nerf, I mean, obviously like it's like a more time to kill, but it's like they kept the pattern the same, like how fast the gun shoots like that. So it's like it's still basically the same gun if you know how to use it in the right situation for sure. But half buys, you know, we're in there. We're Stinger 9.
I don't know what it is, but I mean, when we see a Stinger, when we see a Sheriff or something, we just take it a little bit more seriously, I feel like, than other people do, you know? Like, they kind of get lazy or they don't really respect it, whereas, like, we take every single gun, every single game, every single round, we take it, like, to the T.
C9 were so proficient with Valorant's pistols and SMGs throughout the regular season that they earned themselves the 2nd seed heading into playoffs, a feat literally nobody would have predicted before VCT Americas got underway. Look, playing Valorant may be like pulling teeth for me, but even I can appreciate just how impressive C9's eco round prowess is. The stats really are extraordinary, even if their playoffs were not.
And that was the guy who actually knows what he's talking about.
So even if C9's eco round success was special, it's still a lot more doable in Valorant than in CS. And depending on who you ask, some people might tell you that they don't like the fact that nearly every single gun in Valorant is strong enough to do the job, especially most of us grizzled CS players. We enjoy knowing that our economic advantage can secure rounds, and that when we full buy, we won't just get obliterated by some f***ing zoomer running us down with a judge or lasering us with a stinger. And although it might not seem great from a competitive standpoint, if you ask a lot of the Valorant community, they'll tell you that they think that it adds a sort of depth to the game.
Look, I don't think the guns should be nerfed, because I think what's strangely interesting about Valorant is that low-key, every gun is viable. Speaking of the shorty.
The game's in a really good spot, in my opinion, where there's a lot of variety in ways you can play the game and what you want to use inside the game. All guns having a specific use is kind of a cool thing. Some might be a little overtuned, like I think the Marshal's a little bit strong right now, but everything else has its individual use and rounds on certain maps and certain areas, and like if you play to those strengths, you see, you know, success with it.
I honestly just think they're fun. I actually think because our team just likes to have fun, right? Like we're all like trolly people. Like we're serious, obviously, right? But when, you know, if you look down to our personalities, we're all kind of just like clowns, you know? And I think when you have like those worse guns, you're kind of just like, I mean, they're like clown guns, you know? They're not, you know, they're not the Phantom, the Vandal, the Op, the Odin, whatever, right? They're just like, they're forced by like gimmick guns. And I think that's just like why we're so good with them, is like, it kind of just fits our personality. We just like to have fun with them, and it just works for us.
So, sure, you can argue that, of course, the guys on C9 love the fact that all of the guns are viable since they're the ones using them to secure rounds, but the reality is that it's just Valorant functioning as intended. These are decisions that Riot made because they wanted to appeal to a wider audience, instead of just the aging, hardcore TAC FPS fans that live and breathe CS and are fine with like 7 guns being viable. But that's not to say that you can't appreciate both.
You play whichever game makes you happy, and it's okay to like both games. And if anyone tells you otherwise, don't believe them.
Comparing the two games isn't fair because they're just not made for the same kind of gamer. Shitty guns being good in Valorant is part of what made Valorant popular in the first place and helped it step out of CSGO's shadow. You don't see many players buying a Negev in pro play, but you definitely see the occasional Ares. And that is a huge part of Valorant's charm. We've sat here for years putting both games side by side and comparing them, but the reality is that maybe they're not as similar as we once thought.